Hello friends, welcome to the Wordcloud Tarot Show. Today is the 16th of November 2020, and rather than doing a tarot reading based on some news event as we typically do, I'm going to address a question that I've been asked by a few people and that I've been meaning to do a reading on for some time. This is an important question. How does the tarot even work anyway? Is it magic? Is it supernatural? Well, it can't be those things, obviously, because there's no such thing as magic. And supernatural basically literally means impossible. Now, we're going to do a tarot reading to find out the answer to the question of how the tarot works. We're going to use this, my tarot deck that I designed. It is the easiest tarot deck to use in the whole world. The meanings of the cards are written on the cards in English, plain to read, so that anyone can transparently see how the reading is progressing, and so that beginners can learn how it all works very quickly. Now, the tarot set consists of basically your normal playing cards, except the suits are slightly renamed, and there's an extra royal card in each pack. There's also an extra suit, which is sometimes known as trumps or the major arcana, which has some other cards. Now, each of the cards from both the minor suits and the major arcana has a meaning assigned to it, which has been honed over many, many years by the tarot practitioners to rest in its current, perhaps not final, but current form. Today we're going to do what we always do with the tarot, which is to put them in a spread, a layout of cards that tells you. It assigns more than just the meaning of the card, but the meaning to the card. For instance, in an element spread, like we'll be doing today, we have cards representing Earth, or the ground state, the overall base of the matter. We have a card for fire, or the will, human will. We have a card for air, or otherwise known as influences. And we have a card for water, which tells us about intuition. And we also have a card for spirit, which gives us an overall sort of answer for how the reading is going. So we'll start the reading today by looking at the Earth card. This is the 14th wand card. It's known as the King, for good reason, because it is one of the royal cards. The tarot works then in a ground earth way through all of these things written on the cards, through business and expectation, adversity, perseverance and misfortune, swagger, progress, determination, gravitas. The basic state of the cards is that some philanthropist has perhaps set out with an expectation and they're determined to read the cards and see how it goes. But we are going to look at what the fire or will card tells us. Now, that's the 21st trump card. It's known as the universe, and here we see Ouroboros eating himself. The universe cards represent things like the initial state of the universe. It represents integration and realization and a completion. In this position here as the will, it perhaps tells us that everything we will can be divided into factors, and perhaps the tarot cards themselves have been honed by mimetic evolution to represent these factors of human will. The will is realized through expression of the cards. We see the reader is pushing their will into the interpretation of the card as they do the reading. Now we're going to look at the next one, and this is air or influence. In this occasion, it's come up as the Two of Trumps. The Two of Trumps is known as the Priestess, and she, of course, represents spirituality and divinity and unconsciousness. You see, the unconscious influences that the reader has over the cards, or over the interpretation of the cards, comes through as an influence on that interpretation. The unconsciousness of the reader can therefore come through in the fortune telling. We've got the words fortune telling here. The arcaneness of the different descriptions of the cards can be used so that the reader can, again, subconsciously force their reading, their own interpretation onto the cards through the deck itself. So that's the air influence. What about the water influence? This is often known as intuition as well. That gives us the 5th trump card, known as the Heirophant. Now, the Heirophant is a learned fellow, a very learned fellow. The institutions of learning in particular, it might represent government, for instance, or schools, or business as usual, and constitution. Here, in the water or intuition section, it shows us that the knowledge and intuition of the reader come through again in the interpretation of the cards to give the devotee a way of reading them, an understanding. The reader's understanding is projected onto the cards. It doesn't come from the cards, it comes from the reader through the cards. So overall, or spirit, we've got the 1st of Pentacles, known as the Ace of Pentacles. This card represents conception and birth, as all the aces do, because, of course, they are the first in each of the suits. It represents paying dollars in this case, because the Pentacles represents money in many senses. Cooperation is an important factor here in the spirit of how the tarot works, because, of course, there's a cooperation between the reader and the readee, and indeed the cards themselves. So given all these extra cards that we've drawn, can we read out some kind of general meaning, a story that all of these cards fit, that can tell us how the cards work? Well, let's have a think. Yes. Well, if we look at these cards, we can see quite a few things, of course. We've got here the King of Wands, and he's representing the earth, the ground. He tells us all about goals and enterprise and expectation. So when a person comes into a reading, they have in their person goals and expectations, and the enterprise of the reading will bring those goals and expectations to the fore. How will it do this? Well, the will of the reader anticipates and explores all the different meanings of the cards until we find epiphanies and predictors that tell us that we're on the right path. The air influence card here is telling us that the unconscious expectation is filled by teaching and instinct, and scrying is a good word that's on this card here. Scrying is sort of searching through all the different meanings on the card until your little epiphanies go off and you can understand a new thing that you hadn't thought of before. The water or intuition card here is telling us that the reader comes to the cards again with knowledge and learning implicit inside them already. They've already learned and all of the meanings of the cards through rules and rule-based learning. And that knowledge is then interpreted through the cards themselves by the reader. So once again, we've got this idea of the reader brings the knowledge of what the cards all mean, and that interpretation of that card produces a meaning for the final thing. The overall thing here is we've got a cooperation here between the reader and the cards, a fusion, perhaps, of random ideas. What this tells us about how the cards, the tarot works, is that the spread will give you a pattern for a story. Here the spread is all of the different possible types of influence, the different elements. And each of the cards in those positions will give you a random set of meanings, which have been, random's not really right, they've been honed by a process of mimetic evolution for thousands of years to represent the archetypes that make up a human mind. And when all of those archetypes that make up a human mind are laid into this position of the spread, a human reader who brings with them their own previous knowledge, both of the cards and of the universe outside the cards, imposes their own will, their own fire onto the meaning and draws out not the randomness that was there, but a filtered version of the randomness that was there, which exaggerates the things in their own subconscious, helping the card reading to become clear. So there we go. That's basically the meaning of the cards, I think, today. How the tarot works, I think we've just described it. It works through a mimetic selection of deep arcane ideas. It works through a mimetic selection of deep ideas, archetypes ideas in the mind, and brings those out through the filter of your own presuppositions to show you an idea which has come not from some magical source, but from the brain of the reader, combined with these well-evolved archetypes on each of the cards. So that's the end of today's reading. It's quite a special one. If you would like to use your own subconscious to read some cards and to get the meanings of the cards, remember these are the easiest cards to read because they have written on them the actual meanings in plain English. You can get yourself a copy at thewordcloudtarot.com. There's also an auto reader there, so you can lay out a spread and get some random cards delivered to you. That's it for this week. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you again next week.